think ever since then, I like try whatever time I know I have to get up in the morning, even on the weekend, I get up at the same time. So like 4:30 is the earliest I have to get up. So I try, unless I'm feeling really, really down, not to make up sleep. I try to just stay with a consistent schedule and try to get back on that 8 hours as much as possible. So yeah, I would say number one is sleep, that 6 to 8 hours minimal. And that's also when all your recovery, if you're going to work hard and work out and whatnot, I mean, all your recovery, all your adaptation is going to happen during that time. Number two, as far as movement and whatnot goes, and I used to preach this, but then I also had 2.5 hours that I could take to myself and take my time, and now it's really been like, oh shit, like if I have 10 minutes, excuse my language, I don't know if that's allowed on the podcast, but if I only have 10 minutes, I need to figure out how to get something in and to optimize that time. So, I mean, like I would be at work and I would have 10 minutes in between classes and I'd go hop on the elliptical machine for 10 minutes just to get my heart rate up. Or another 10 minutes in between class, I'd go hop on a foam roller or whatever was feeling tight that day, or a trigger point ball, and try to work that tissue out. So it wasn't optimal, and growing up, I was definitely a perfectionist. So I liked spending that 2 hours. I like having my perfect routine. Yeah. So getting out of that and trying not to be a perfectionist and trying to just get in what I can, is what I would say. Every little bit counts. Something is always better than nothing. And so trying to get out of that would be number two. And then my number three would be like, as far as cooking, and I love to cook. I used to spend, I was busy here as well, but I would spend, 3 to 4 hours on a Sunday and prep 2 meals, 4 servings of each. And, I would have leeway in there. That's about 8 to 10 meals pre-prepared for the week with some leeway if, I want to go out with friends, or I just was getting sick of what was pre-prepared and I wanted to prepare something fresh. Right. That definitely has not been, with no kitchen access, really not been able. So, just trying to make the best options. Like you tell your clients, in the grocery store, what are the best pre-prepared options? And I've had to go to that, or Whole Foods has a buffet that would cater where I work, and, trying to pick out the best options, getting in your half a plate of veggies and, a quarter plate of protein and, healthy whole grain, and just making the best of it is definitely more pricey. It's not how I would like to go, but, just like with the exercise, making the best of the time you have, whatever choices are in front of you or whatnot, making the best of those choices as well. So, sleep, as much movement as you can, even if it's just a little bit amount of time, and then making the best nutritional options with what's in front of you, even if it's not ideal, making the best you can out of it. So those are the top 3.
I like that. When you were talking about waking up at a certain time, that's your set time, and no matter what happens, that's the time you wake up. Have you heard of, back in the day, how, I think it was medieval ages, I can't remember, where they would have first and second sleep? They would...
I did read an article on that a couple of years ago. So yeah.
I thought that was kind of fascinating, especially people that struggle with insomnia. Now they're recommending, okay, if you wake up and your mind's running 100 miles an hour, get up and don't make it a mindless ramble to get your day going. If it's 3 a.m., there are things you can do. So if your mind's running, they were just saying, well, get down and start breathing and do as much breathing as possible, or pick a meditative practice. It doesn't have to be a formal meditation where you're sitting and aligning your chakras, whatever you want to call it, aligning your spine per se. I mean, I'm a shitty meditator. I can't do that. That's for sure. If I lie down on my back, I have a better propensity to breathe through my diaphragm. That's just physiologically true. So I do that, and I just play any music. It doesn't have to be wusa or whatever it is, but it does have a theme. And the theme that for me is, it just has a certain kind of beat, and it's just very consistent. And if I can focus on the beat, I know I'm successful in meditating. It doesn't mean you have to reach some success, a enlightened state from one meditative practice. As long as you're aware and you can focus on 1 or 2 or 3 things, even if it's man, you just got in a car accident today, which is crazy. Even if it's waking up man, I'm thinking about that woman that pulled out and she didn't even see me coming, and she made up some story about how I was going so fast, but then she said that she didn't see me. What BS. Even though you're thinking about that and you're focusing on that, and you can relate it back to the beat, back and forth, it primes your body and your nervous system to be able to focus on those things, which is kind of cool. And you're successful because you're simply aware of your thoughts. And that's what the whole purpose of meditation is to be aware. So I thought that was kind of interesting that, you wake up at a set time, and some people complain of, I need more sleep. But maybe you just need to wake up and breathe and be aware of your thoughts. And then that way, those thoughts that are running 50 miles an hour are now honed in and focused and primed. And then you can redirect your thought processes to something else. That was one thing. The second thing they said was to eat a small meal that's relatively is more on the fat side, like fat, and then you have some carb, a little bit of veggie, and then go back to bed. If it's 1 a.m., do that. So you breathe, eat a small meal, go back to bed. Wake up, and say you wake up 2 or 3 hours after the fact, that's still fine. Wake up, and now you can choose 2 or 3 other practices. And it could be doing a warm, cold contrast shower. It could be you reading a book, a podcast, whatever it is. If it's relaxing to you, do it. And more often than not, people come out of it feeling actually more relaxed and rested, which I thought was, in some ways sounds contradictory to most sleep studies. And I don't know physiologically exactly what is happening when you do that. And the only thing that makes sense is that when you're breathing deep and you're doing that, you are activating the parasympathetic nervous system. You're going down that route. You're resting. You are taking those thoughts and you're redirecting it somewhere else. So it's not having a complete hold on you. But it would be cool to see if researchers were able to study that, first and second sleep. It would be hard to control for all of that, but I thought that was really cool. But I think the other thing you touched on that was important was everything does count and everything matters in the grand scheme of things. And a lot of people have this all or nothing approach. It's well, if I'm not going to do it all, then why should I do it anyway? I'm going to eat this cupcake, right? It's just the logic is so flawed, and it seems like the logic is more redirected towards I don't want to do anything because that is the more comfortable route. And because if I can't do anything, then I'm not going to do anything, or if I can't do everything, rather, I'm not going to do anything. So why, in your opinion, does everything count in the cumulative aspect of living? Why?
It's kind of a deep one. I mean, every little bit is always, I could get into the research and stuff we study that's going to make a difference. They've done, on the prolonged sitting studies, getting up for as little as a minute, breaking up every hour for as little as a minute made a difference metabolically. In regards to insulin levels and hormone and whatnot, just a minute, and that's all it is. Just standing up and breaking up instead of sitting prolonged for 8 hours. You've gotten up 8 minutes out of 8 hours, once at the end of every hour. But even just, if you think about it, your tissue, if you're again going back to sitting, if you're just sitting there and it's just knotted up 8 hours straight, if you spend 1 minute, 5 minutes of the day releasing that's obviously going to be more released than if you hadn't. And then, same thing with the nutrition, making one positive choice out of the day versus none. At least you're starting now to think about it. You're becoming aware of it, and you're starting to build habits as well, too. And you've maybe got at least some nutrients as opposed to maybe no nutrients if you're maybe eating pre-prepared or packaged stuff that, crap that has no value added to it. So, I don't know. I think it's right, straightforward in the answer. Something is always better than nothing. Every little bit is better than not a little bit. So, yeah.
So, I guess where my head was, why do you think our culture is so... it seems like the culture is more directed towards, I want everything now. And it's probably indicative of the way our... culture is, the way our industrial society is. It's based on the fact that everything's becoming easier, because it is. We can get from place to place. We have Ubers now. We have smart cars. We have smartphones. It does everything for us. We don't have to do much work. And I wonder, maybe you can shine some light on this. I wonder if it is actually kind of making us weaker in some ways, because we're not putting in enough or as much effort to use our nervous system, to engage our minds, and to move our bodies, and to engage with our environments with our bodies. It's now more like I'm going to sit here and wait till I get to my destination, or I'm going to zone out and watch TV. What else do you think is going on in people's heads? Do you know people specifically, you don't have to name them, but do you know people specifically that have that mentality And have you gone through stuff like that where you're just like wanting to just zone out and not like do the things necessary?
Oh, I mean, for sure. We all get to that point. Like I was telling you, I was working with Scott last year. And I had finally got to a point where, you know, I had to let my ego go, I think is a big thing. Like I knew I wanted, you know, we all want to be able to, like, my biggest goal is I wanted to be able to squat my body weight. And obviously I was making like perfectly. And I want to do it now, damn it. Why can't I do it? I'm a fitness professional. Why can't I squat my body weight perfectly? I have some, you know, ankle and hip issues and whatnot. And I finally had to just say, fuck it. I'm going to pay someone and we're going to work on this slowly. And I literally had to pay someone because it would take me 2 hours initially just to get mobilized properly, to get my ass down to the ground. And so I think one big thing, and for me too, and I have to get it out of the way, is like ego. It's like we all want to be able to do what we want to do and not admit that maybe we aren't there and can't do it yet. So just slowing it down. And one of the big things I found over the couple of years is, even though like you and I are fitness professionals, I think we all probably do need a coach. Keep us in check, keep us accountable, even though we do that for others. I mean, you know, accountability and motivation, it's not an endless commodity. It all has its limits. And when we're giving so much of ours to other people, it doesn't leave a whole lot for us necessarily at the end of the day. And so, you know, having someone else to hold you accountable, getting your ego out of the way, and then just being okay with challenge, I think is a big thing, and not being perfect at it. Like I said, I grew up a perfectionist and still have tendencies towards that. And I like a good challenge. I've actually, you know, looking back on things, the things I performed the best, or my greatest achievements that I would consider, are things that were like really challenging, or the people said, you know, you're probably not going to be able to be perfectly successful at that or something. And so, you know, a good challenge is good, but things like, you know, the autopilot or whatnot, we completely turn off our brains. We're not challenging our brains. The GPS, and that's something I've thinking on. I just read that book Spark, and about how exercise affects the brain or whatnot. And just thinking, and I was thinking about like Alzheimer's and stuff too. And if you think now, like our grandparents, when they traveled, and I've had this conversation, or even our parents, when they traveled, they had these giant ass maps they had in the car that they had to read through. And I'm like, how do you freaking read this and drive at the same time? And now we've got a little GPS we don't have to look at that, and we're just zoning out on the road until it says turn right on Holbrook Lane or whatever. And so I think, you know, just thinking and challenging your brain, both from a mental standpoint and an exercise standpoint. If you haven't read that book Spark, you should read it. Lots of good things happen in the brain from being physically active too. So I think my 3 things there were motivation / accountability, someone to hold you accountable, someone to keep you motivated outside of yourself, or something, getting your ego out of the way, and being okay with challenge and not being perfect.
Yeah. That whole challenge thing sparked something in me, because challenge is it exposes a lot of your vulnerabilities, exposes your insecurities. And people don't want to be exposed, especially in a group setting. If people are in a class, I don't know if you've noticed it when you teach a class yourself. I know I've noticed it in TLF classes. When people are extremely humbled by a movement, and it could be something so silly. It looks silly. Like you're lying on your stomach prone, and you're lifting a dowel rod over your head and doing like a press. And they're just like, this is so hard. And then, you know, they can go and do like a deadlift for 400 pounds, but they can't do that. Right? And so there's a missing component to your entire movement capacity. But at the same time, it's like, well, I have all these people around me. I have to look cool, right? At least this is what I am projecting in my head. If I was in a group setting, I would be thinking this, and this is what I'm assuming they're thinking too, which is most likely the case. It's like I have to look a certain way because I'm amongst my peers, and to gain social approval of being a badass in this movement or whatever it is, I need to like shine. I got to perform, you know, it's like do or die. And it is humbling, and challenge does suck. Sometimes, like I was just doing front squats before Erin came in, and to be honest with you, I don't enjoy front squats at all. I actually dislike them quite a bit, but I do enjoy them because they expose my weaknesses. You know, my mid back, which is probably a weak point for most people, mid back strength. It makes your ankles really work hard. Like you can't run away from ankle immobility. It's like, well, you better mobilize them. I had those voodoo wraps around my ankles, so I want those suckers to open up, and it's painful. It's not easy, and you're like struggling to stay upright, and you're breathing hard. Feels like the bar's choking your neck. It's not comfortable. But I think, for me at least, what's been resourceful is this kind of idea of do it anyway. And it sounds like it sounds easy to say that in theory, like do it anyway, like, you know, just do it. But there are some valuable lessons in the practice, and